All right. Well, let's go ahead and get this thing started. It is 6:31. Actually, Brian, we're running late.
Oh, man, I know. Technology. Hey, Kevin Cook says, what's up, peeps?
What's up, Kevin Cooks? Cook? What's up, man? All right, guys. Well, this week we're going to be talking about construction and design and also giving away an awesome surf rack, and that starts right now. So there was a movie that was supposed to come out in 2012. It was like it was a huge, like, big wave surfing film.
Yeah.
But it lost funding. And did you ever see the trailer for it?
No.
Here, hang on. Here it is. Look at that closeout.
Get your tops there. Biggest tarp. Dude, how many tarps was that?
I don't know.
Look at that guy.
Dude, it was directed by Quentin Tarantino.
Oh, it's just like, dude, you got the best barrels ever.
He
dude.
was there.
Just like you pull in and you just get spit right out of them. And you just drop in and just smack the lip. Whoop-ah! Drop down, snap, and then after that, you just drop in, just ride the barrel and get pitted. So pitted.
So pitted, man. So you never saw that movie?
No, I did. Now that you reminded me.
Yeah, dude. It lost funding.
I'm so disappointed. I was so disappointed.
Yeah, I'm pretty disappointed that it lost funding as well. So
I was supposed to air in that, you know?
Yeah.
I didn't even make it.
Did you see all that weight that I lost for that movie? I actually gained about like 15 pounds for that.
Oh, man.
But man. All right, guys. Well, we're going to be talking about surfboard design and construction today. But first, we're going to get to the Instagram pick of the week.
Welcome to the Doomswell Podcast Pick of the Week.
So pick of the week goes to Mr. Ben Hovland. Ben Hovland right here at BHZ3 Stylin'. Got a 4.6 Neo, I believe, and that was a tidy whitey model. He got that at the Dallas Boat Show.
Hey, would you pronounce that Bees 3 Styling?
Bees. I've always wondered whenever I looked at that name.
He'd be like,
Bee,
hey, a Bees 3 Styling.
I don't know, man.
I don't know.
I try to pronounce stuff all the time on Instagram. I'm like, it's like, I feel like on Dumb and Dumber, whenever he was trying to pronounce he's like, teh.
So my wife has a thing. She makes fun of me. Remember that Phoeben thing?
The what?
Phoeben?
Steven? Oh.
Stephen?
Yeah.
I got a thing with spoon.
Oh, Foon.
I always go, boom.
F-P-O-O-N?
Yeah, they make fun of me.
All right. Well, guys, this week we're going to be talking about construction and design, why we build the boards the way that we do. And this week is sponsored by Hyperride Designs. And we've been talking about it all week on Facebook, all week on Instagram. And Brian, I think you actually have the thing.
Dude.
Hang on. Let me go back here to Brian.
This thing is insane.
That thing is stout.
Check it out. It's pretty cool. So this mounts to your boat like this, like so.
Yeah, like the rack would be.
Yeah.
Show them where the rack would be.
So the rack's up top.
Boom.
And then your board slides under these straps. It's got some super heavy duty straps. Got the padded cover here where your buckle goes. I mean, this thing's well thought out.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy too.
I'm super excited.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited
really
about
cool.
it too. So this is what it looks like, kind of mounted underneath, and you can stick your surfboard in there. And let's see, let me see this here. So it's a quick and easy access to your surfboard. Get your boards off of your seats and in the boat and out of the way. The boards move with the racks, not in the racks, so they won't get damaged, and your boards won't even get damaged in rough water conditions, and they look great loaded up. So I think he actually has one here loaded up. But anyway, guys, these things are like $500, and once you feel these things, they are freaking amazing. They, I mean, just the quality of them, how heavy duty they are, and you can see our bamboo nub step way out there in California. Mr. John Lee has one there. So we're going to go ahead and get into the foundation of the actual surfboard and how we actually build these things. So back in the day, we used to shape a lot with polyurethane foam, which was the most beautiful, crisp, amazing, dense, beautiful foam. And in 2005, Clark Foam actually closed down. And Clark Foam was the biggest producer of polyurethane blanks. So the blank down there on the bottom right, that's actually polyurethane foam. It's just awesome. So that's what Brian and I used to make all of our ocean boards out of. But then after 2005, it was really hard to kind of find it. So people started reaching out and trying to, figure out, what other types of foams, they could use. So, people started experimenting with EPS foams now, and that's actually what we're using. So back in 1965, whenever the movie Gidget came out, you can see here, most boards were being made with polyurethane foam. And this is actually Mr. Robert August right here. He was the legend, the man, the myth, the legend back in the day whenever I first wanted to start, surfing, or whenever I wanted to start first shaping, excuse me. Ugh, couldn't get it out. So he was in the Endless Summer 2. So if anybody has ever seen any of those kinds of movies, just amazing movies. Robert August was just an amazing shaper.
Yeah, he still is. I mean,
he still is.
Him and his son are still making killer boards.
Heck yeah, they are. So out of these two, Brian, which one was your favorite? Endless Summer or Endless Summer 2?
As classic as the first one was,
Mm-hmm.
I gotta go with the second one.
I like the second one
Dude,
too.
Wingnut?
Yeah.
Dude was awesome.
Yeah, Wingnut and Pat.
Yeah, Pat.
Yeah. They're looking old now, man.
Yeah, Pat's still in the scene, though.
He is still in the scene.
Both of them, though.
So we're going to talk a little bit about EPS versus polyurethane. So after Clark Foam shut down, people started using EPS, and I'm kind of actually glad that that EPS is starting to be used more. So the density, there's different kinds of densities of EPS. There's 1.5 pounds, there's 2 pound, there's all the way up to I think it's
6 or 8 pound.
Yeah, it's something crazy, but then it starts to get really heavy. So in our boards, we use a 2 pound density EPS in our cores, and we could use a 1.5 pounds, which would actually make the boards lighter. But what you get is just like you're saying, you have to think about the foundation which we're building on. The less dense that the foam is, the more number one, the more it's actually going to start to off gas, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. Number two is people in this type of construction, and I don't care what company you buy it for, you're going to end up getting a compression dent or a heel dent in the deck of your board or on the bottom of your board. So we use a more dense foam, like a 2 pound EPS, and yes, that's going to eventually dent over time, but people actually like that, kind of creates like a footbed, and it kind of custom fits your feet with the EPS foam. So the benefits of EPS is that it's less dense than the polyurethane foam. Mm-hmm. And I remember the first wake surf I ever built was out of polyurethane.
Yep.
And I think it was a turd. It was absolutely garbage. And then but there was a lot of factors in that. So
we still have that board.
We still do. We still have Doomswell 1. So okay, so it's less dense, it's lighter, it's more buoyant, and it allows us to use epoxy resin. Well, actually, you can use that on polyurethane. You can't use. Anyway, yeah, epoxy is awesome.
Yes.
But anyway, the thing about EPS that I like the most is that it's more buoyant in fresh water, because in the ocean, like the more dense boards, like your 5 pound Divinycells and your polyurethane foams, the salt actually helps you to have a little bit more buoyancy, but not so much here in the fresh water. So that's why we use the EPS so much.
Fun fact.
That is a fun fact. Now, the only downside that we have found to EPS, well, I guess there's a few. Like if you're a hand shaper, then it is harder to shape. But the only downside is the delamination factor. Yep. So what we were talking about earlier, so if you have like a 1.5 pound foam, what can happen is in high altitude situations, or in, let's just say, really high heat situations. Why it's so important to not keep your board baking up there on a bimini in this type of construction is once the core of that board starts to off gas, what you get is like a delamination. So if you guys ever have a big bubble in your board, like what we're showing here, it's because the board isn't vented and you're creating pressure within that capsule. So the heat causes the core of that board to start to off gas. You start to build pressure up in that capsule.
It's got to go somewhere. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, where we used to have problems was up in like Colorado, Utah, when people go from a low elevation to a high elevation real fast.
Well, wasn't it when they were going from the highs down to the lows?
Yeah, or vice versa.
Like they would live up the mountains,
Yep.
so they would have all this pressure on their board, and when they came back down, that pressure would try to release.
Yep.
And those things were popping.
Yeah. So I mean, so what we had to do basically is kind of put our heads together, and whenever we first started building with EPS, we used to vent all of our boards because that's what I was afraid of.
So EPS has been used for years. I mean, even back in when they first started building boards, I mean, 50s and 60s, they were toying around with EPS. But even back then, they would vent the boards back then.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I mean, you got to use a vent. So what we do is we use a one-way Gore-Tex vent. So if anybody in 2018 or 2019, if you have any of our products, what you'll see is a one-way Gore-Tex vent right there between the traction pads. And what that's going to allow the board to do is breathe. So if you should never have a delamination in 2018 or 2019. And if you do, let us know because we'll make sure we make that right.
For sure.
Yeah. So, so that's basically the foundation of what we're building on, and that is a 2-pound EPS. You can go 1.5 pounds to make the board lighter, but you're going to have the consequences of more off-gassing and also having probably more heel dents in your board.
It's just less dense. So
it's less dense.
Dense. So yeah, you're going to get some dents in that guy.
Yeah, and the way that I kind of describe it is like if you're at the beach and you lay your blanket out there on the sand. You know, even if it's like the really wet, compact sand, the more you jump on it, it's going to end up denting because you got to remember the foundation of what we're building on. I mean, if we had we could do it with like a 5-pound Divinycell, but that would be such a heavy board. You'd be surfing a brick.
And the other thing to think about with the density too is, I don't know if we're going to get into this a whole lot, but the flex of the board. Mm-hmm. So the reason we love the surf style construction over a compression molded is these boards actually when you're turning and you're doing these big bottom turns or you're putting your weight onto the board to turn, these boards actually flex. And when you come to like release out of the turn, they similar to the fins that we were talking about a couple weeks ago, mm-hmm. the boards actually spring back at you. And so the more dense foam you're going to have, the more life you're going to have out of that board. If that board is not very dense, where you go into like the 0.5 pound or 1 pound or 1.5 pounds, you don't get as much spring. You don't get as much pop back.
Right.
So it's a minute detail that just makes our boards feel more alive.
Yeah.
Or anybody who's using this style of construction is going to make the board feel more lively.
Yeah. So before we go on to the next section, are we missing any questions or anything like that?
Yeah, there's a ton of comments coming in. So there was a few comments about the racks. I think we should probably circle back on those.
Yeah.
But talking about construction,
I see one there. It says, is it...
Oh, what does EPS stand for? So two different ways of looking at it. It's expanded polystyrene.
Yep.
Some people say extruded polystyrene.
But that's two different processes.
XPS.
Yeah.
So EPS is expanded polystyrene.
Yep.
Just to answer those questions.
So I saw a question on there a second ago. Is it billet aluminum? So it's constructed of CNC cut T6061 aluminum. That's what it says here in my notes.
For all you mechanical engineers out there.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's go back to some of these guys. I think we're... Nice rack. I wonder if that's his logo or his slogan. Let's see.
Yeah, sorry guys that you couldn't hear the guys earlier. So anyway, we're just making sure that we're not missing any questions here. Can't hear them. Sock your stick. Yes, you should definitely do that.
Always.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got into the foundation of board building. So now we're going to go basically. So once you kind of figure out if you ever do decide to go build a board, which God help you if you do, because
once you get, it's fun. It's very rewarding once you get it done, but you got to be extremely patient.
Yes,
especially if you're learning.
Yes. So once you figure out the foundation of what you're doing, and what we recommend is a 2-pound EPS with, in the wake surf realm for buoyancy, and also if you're surfing in freshwater, you get into the design phase. So Brian's expertise right now is basically CAD, and that is not Brian. And if it is, you lost a lot of weight. Basically, we have CAD systems that we actually go in and create these boards on, just to make basically make sure all of our rockers are right, all of our bottom contours are right, all of our rails are right.
We can look at every millimeter of that board to make sure we have every curve where we want it.
Yeah. So, and we get questions, how are your boards made and stuff like that. So other than them coming off the CNC machine, just getting the true shape out of it, which helps to eliminate process time. Man, a lot of man hours actually goes into this, because there's a lot of fine tuning of the actual rails of these boards. Making sure that the concaves on the bottoms are right, making sure that all your crisp lines are there, so that way whenever it goes into the glassing process, that because sometimes the shapers and the glassers, they'll butt heads and just say, hey, you didn't do this right, now it's going to throw me off in this process. So that's very good. Oh yeah, John just texted me real quick. Let me get up to this real quick. Anybody that does want a surf rack, you can use the discount code Doomswell50. You'll get a $50 off and a free board sock until the end of April.
Wow.
So if you go to his website, I failed to mention that earlier, and I got a little flustered whenever people couldn't hear him on there. So I'm sorry if I skipped over that. So there's the discount code there. Here we go. Okay. So
kind of back to the process. Are you ready to talk about that again?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Kind of back to the process. That we have invested a lot of time up front. Steve Pearson, you can see, is the guy in the video who's kind of working the board CAD there. But we've invested a lot of time with him. He's spent a lot of years and hours in different board building factories throughout California, and he came to us with just a ton of knowledge on how to get our shapes into the computer, so we can kind of expand our business, if you will, and get more boards out to you guys. But man, I'll tell you what, the amount of hours and the amount of boards that we cut to test out the CNC process once we first got into it, that was a big learning curve. But how rewarding was that when we finally kind of got that dialed in, and we can start producing boards that people were loving over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, it took us a long time to come up with all of our shapes, and it was tough. So the design aspects that we were talking about. So once you kind of get into a CAD program, and the things that we look at as far as designing surfboards is going to be your rockers, your rail designs, your tail designs, your nose designs, your bottom contours, the volume, how long it is. I mean, there's so many things that we have to take into consideration as board builders, especially, whenever somebody calls me or they call you and they're trying to figure out, what board do I ride? Mm-hmm. There's so many factors. Yep. And, are you a skim style rider? Are you a hybrid style rider? Are you a surf style rider? Those are all things that we have to take into consideration whenever, we are building these things. So we build them as production customs, basically. You're still getting that custom feel, but we make them now for everybody. Yep. Just because we can't keep up. So okay, so let's get into rocker. So this is more of a surf style rocker. So whenever we're talking about rocker, that's actually how much bend is in the bottom of the board. And so there's good things and bad things about rocker. The good thing is you get really nice tight turns. And you can also, whenever you're seeing a lot of these guys, in these surf competitions, they're surfing more of a surf style board. Because they're able to get really big bottom turns. They're able to generate more drive out of those types of boards because of the rail design in those as well.
So let me break down, simplify kind of what you're saying, the surf style board. Mm-hmm. And that's really when you're thinking surf style rocker. If you look at this video is kind of going back and forth. I love this. You can see from the tail to the nose, it's a continuous curve. Mm-hmm. And you may have a little bit more pitch in the nose, a little bit more pitch in the tail, but even the center of the board is is curved. So that surf style, the board has a continuous curve. So when you go to turn it and do all those really tight turn maneuvers, the rocker has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many aspects.
And if you want to start getting really technical, once you start putting in concave, that changes your center of the board rocker from the rail rocker. Two totally different things at that point.
Yeah,
and we'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah. So real quick, just check the comments as they're coming in. Does anybody have any questions on rocker at all? Or
Let's see. Sir.
And we really hope everybody's enjoying this podcast. We're trying to give you guys some good information so that way we can basically educate you, so that way whenever you do call us, or maybe you're at the store buying a new board, you know exactly what you're looking for, and maybe you can even teach the pro shop guys something.
Yeah. So here's a interesting question from Brent Elfison. Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. Do you consider fins when designing a shape, or do you design the shape and fit the fins to that? So I think there's no good answer to that. I think in general, you want to think about the kind of start at 30,000 feet and then dial it in. You never want to me, you never want to build a board around the fins. I think the fins are just a component of everything else you're thinking about. You're thinking about the concave, you're thinking about the rocker, tail rocker, nose rocker, my deck curve, all that kind of stuff. The fins kind of fit into that. But the fins also are driven by the tail shape and where the rocker is, and where the rider is going to be positioned on the board, depending on their wave type, their ride style, all that kind of stuff. So when you're talking about a true custom shape, yeah, I mean, the fins kind of come after some other factors are thought about. So hopefully that answers your question, Brent.
Yeah, I think that fins are conditional. It's just kind of like on the fin podcast that we did. So if you didn't see that fin podcast, definitely go back and watch it. It's on our website and also on YouTube. But basically, it's like changing the tires on a car. So you got to fit, the fin to the condition, I think. So sometimes, like whenever I'm surfing a more of a wave with a roll to it, like a Malibu or something like that, I won't need so much of a I think I'll go with more of like a speed generating fin. Whereas like I'm surfing like a really big, huge, steep, like I'll even go back to the Malibu, like an M235 that's just got this ginormous wave. I don't really need to generate speed as much.
You want something that's going to slow you down a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean,
you need to drive it.
Right, so I could go to more like the WCT with the flat foil fin, I think that the fins are conditional.
Yeah.
I think you pick the board for your ride style.
But the placement's very important.
That is important.
I mean, an eighth of an inch off, one way or to the side or to the back or anything is going to affect the board big time. And we've experienced.
You're talking about toe and cant.
Toe and cant, and just the position of it from the tail. We've made some major mistakes before with fin placement.
Yeah, my first board sucked because it was like way too towed in, so it was slow.
Kevin Cook, how does rocker affect speed? So we're talking about rocker, so I'd love to kind of point on that. The reason, and I think, do you have a wake surf rocker to show?
I've got skim style rocker.
Skim style. Okay, so you can see if you're looking at the skim style rocker, that board is very flat. There's a little rocker in the tail and quite a bit up in the nose, or a little bit up in the nose. But with wake surfing, the board is more so planing on top of the water. And so where that water goes, when it's going under your board, how it hits your board, once it hits from the nose to the tail and exits the board and all that is stuff we have to think about. And so rocker affects speed greatly. So if I were to take the first board you had up there with the surf style rocker, with the continuous rocker, that board would be extremely difficult to surf behind a boat. You would be pumping and driving and turning the whole time, which if you watch ocean surfing, that's mostly what you're doing anyways, which you kind of have to because you're dodging sections and you're pumping and turning up, to hit sections and come around different parts of the wave. And so that's why the continuous rocker works really well in the ocean. Whereas wake surfing with the planing, if you have too much nose rocker, you tend to start plowing water.
Yeah, you start to bulldoze. So
you start to bulldoze almost like a snow plow. So it will slow you down considerably. And same thing with tail rocker. If you have too much tail rocker, then that takes out the flatness throughout the bottom, So
it decreases your surface area
exactly
at that point.
But you need a little bit of tail rocker with the surf style wake surfboards, because when you do go to do the actual carves and the turns, if you don't have any tail rocker, then your board's going to feel like a door once you go to lean on the back and turn it. Yeah. So to answer your question, long answer to a quick question is yes. Rocker is best.
It dramatically affects speed. So quick rule of thumb. So the less rocker, the more speed you're going to get. But the more rocker, the more turning ability that you're going to have, but it's going to be slower.
Yep.
The more you're going to have to pump it. So we find like a very happy medium in our boards. I mean, I think like on our skim rockers or our mongrels, I think we're running like 2 1/8 or 2 1/2. And then like our, I think on our surf style boards, we're running about 3.5 inches of nose rocker. But they're you look at where you actually start to put that rocker in, your entry rocker, At that point, do you add a single concave? And then if you add the concave, do you affect your rails? So, I mean, there's just so many things that, we have to take into consideration to make sure that we're creating an amazing experience for you guys, because your guys' conditions are so different. So we kind of have to fit you guys to your perfect riding style. Any other questions?
Let's see. Here's an interesting question from Carrie. Mm-hmm. How many prototype versions do you go through before you finalize a design for production? So let's look at we'll look at kind of our 2 flagship models, mm-hmm. the Nupstep and the Neo. Mm-hmm. Probably 50 to 60 between both versions of just tweaking little things, rocker, fin placement, volume. I mean, we even made a volume change this year after mm-hmm. having the models out there for a couple of years, just based on rider feedback and team rider feedback and customer feedback. And
I think we recycled a whole trailer. Like we have a 16-foot box trailer that I think we ended up having to just cut up old prototypes that we just never used. And I think we threw away about 50 almost made surfboards in the dumpster, cut them in half, threw them away just because they didn't work.
Yep.
And we didn't want somebody else to go, dig it out of the trash and, say, oh, I got it do as well. And then it just goes out there and it's just a turd.
Well, unfortunately, you can't recycle fiberglass. So
no, you can't.
The foam we can, and we do.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, we actually go through quite a few prototypes. Yeah. And honestly, it's a living design. I think we're pretty happy with everything right now. Mm-hmm. I don't see any foreseeable changes, but a lot of testing.
Yeah, we do have something new coming out in 2020 that we're pretty excited about, and we will let you guys know. We're coming out with 2 new shapes for 2020, so definitely tune in. We'll be kind of talking about that probably around the September timeline.
Here's a question.
Okay.
What color board is the fastest? Yellow or red?
Nope. British Racing Green.
Good answer.
I had one of we just opened up a dealer out there in the UK, and we were talking about the Finn podcast, and I was like, hey, did you get a chance to watch it? And he goes, just to prove that I watched it, he sent me a swatch of British Racing Green.
Did he really?
Yeah.
I love it.
That was funny. All right, so the next aspect that we look at is basically the rail design. And so surf style boards. What makes a surf style board is a few things. So just because it has 3 big fins in it does not make it a surf style board. What makes a surf style board is, yes, fins do have a place in that, but it's also your rails. So you'll see in this diagram that I have here, the round rails, roundish rails, and it's also fuller rails, and also an increased rocker in the nose and the tail. That's what makes a surf style board a surf style board. So what you're going to get out of more of a round rail is those rails are harder to sink, and so that's why you're going to get more drive out of those rails. So it's almost like it's more like I'm saying like on almost like a NASCAR tire. The more beef that you have in that tire, the more drive you're going to get out of that corner.
Well, and then another way to look at this is control in your turns. Uh-huh. So when you're carving and turning a surf style board versus a skim board, you'll notice a skim board is more of a pump and lift type mm-hmm. movement, where surf style is definitely more fluid. And the reason is with that round rail is as you turn that board, the round rail allows the water, it actually sinks into the water. So the
Wraps
water is kind of
around the
wrapping
rail.
around that rail.
Mhm.
So it gives you that fluid, smooth turn. And as you go to release, when you get to that sharp rail at the bottom, it allows that board to release the water quicker, as opposed to just a continuous round rail. You'll see even on this surfboard here, the back of the board has that sharp rail, like what we put on our wake surfs.
Yeah, and that's for release.
That's for release.
That's for
Correct.
release and control. But so the what was I about to say? I'm going blank here. I'm going blank.
Sorry, I messed you up.
Yeah. Anyway,
Rails.
rails,
Round rail.
round rail.
Do you have the next diagram that shows the different?
Yeah. So anyway, I'm brain farting here. Sorry.
So that's surf style rail.
Yeah. So that's this is what I wanted to say. To speak to rails, a lot of people think that because you have a very sharp rail, it has more bite, and it's the actual complete opposite. What's going to give you the most bite in a wave is going to be a rounder rail.
Yep.
So get that out of your vocabulary, because let's look at a skim style rail here. So skim style rails, and it's kind of hard to see right there. So if you look at a piece of quarter round in your house, that's exactly how these rails are basically shaped. So it basically, it comes down to, they call it a down rail, and it goes to a 90-degree flat bottom. So what that's allowing the board to do is constantly release water from the bottom of that board, and that's what makes those boards so slick.
Yep.
So you pair it with just like a small fin there in the back for just a little bit of traction. And so that's what makes those boards so fast. And that's what makes them so loose, is because, number one, you don't have very much fin in the water.
Because that water's not grabbing on at all.
No,
that water is
it's not wrapping around those rails.
Yep.
So, and also, skim style boards, they can often handle a bigger rider. So like our 4.4 Mongrel, like I've seen guys that are like 235 pounds riding that one. It's because of that lower rocker profile. The sharper rails, or which are basically the shoulders of the board, can handle more weight, and with that flatter rocker, you have more surface area to be able to plane across that water.
Yep.
So that's the stuff. That's the business right there.
That's it.
So that's skim style rails. I mean, there's really not a whole lot to it.
No, it's pretty simple. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, skims are.
They're easy.
They're skims.
They're easy.
Yeah, they do have a flat bottom. So if you look at this diagram right here, so here's the rail shape. I think that our rail shapes probably are more of like the full rounded to medium all arounder. Well, maybe flat to low rail, because what we do, we have more of a 70-30 rail. 70% of our rails are round, and then you'll notice a really crisp edge right underneath the boards in the 2018 models and also the 2019 models.
And that's the surf styles.
That's the surf style boards, because like we were saying, you're going to get a lot of drive out of those types of rails, but then once they get to a certain point, it's going to release. Also what you need to take into consideration is pairing with bottom contours.
Here we go.
So we've talked about rocker, we've talked about rails. So now let's get into our bottom contours. So you have, all these different kinds, but the two that you're primarily going to see in wake surfing, actually, well, yeah,
three.
There's
two main ones.
Two main ones that we use. But so what you're going to see, like in the top left right there, is just your single concave nose to tail. That's going to be great for basically faster surfing, tighter turns, and it works really well in clean surf, because most of the waves that are being produced out of the back of these boats are super clean. So in order to basically mitigate more nose rocker and tail rocker, we put a single concave from nose to tail.
So what that does, that concave actually allows water to pocket under the board to give you a little bit more control. But that concave actually lifts the board, which gives you more speed.
Yeah. So we use mainly a concave. So in the nub step, that was more of our hybrid board last year, but then we changed it a little bit. So we changed up the rails just a little bit. We basically changed it to match the Neo, and we also put a single concave from nose to tail in the nub step in the 2019 model versus the 2018 model. Because what I found on the nub step in 2018 is that it started to feel really flat, so it was harder to go rail to rail. But so by adding that single concave on the bottom, and it allows the board to kind of go rail to rail a little bit easier, which is more what I like. So I would say that the nub step is probably more of a surf style board now this year. versus the 2018 board, which is more of a hybrid because it has a flat, there's no bottom contour to it, and it does have a little bit sharper of a rail. So it's kind of, it has the surf style volume. It has the, I would say probably 50-50 rail or so, maybe even 40-60. And then, yeah, it's got that, but it's also got the nose rocker and tail rocker of a surf style board. So anyway, we changed it in 2019, which we think is better.
Yep.
Any questions on any of that from
let's see. Mitch Pruitt said, what's quote unquote hard tucked rail? I think we kind of hit on that a little bit. Nothing like a clean slapped MB wake. And then Dylan said that new single concave slaps.
Yeah, so Dylan was out riding his Pavati the other day, and he just got the new 2019 Doomswell Nub Step, and he is in love with that thing. He was throwing threes left and right, sending me videos and stuff with that. So, but anyway, that's the single concave there on the bottom. Then you can look at your flat bottom. So, flat bottom surfboard has a flat planing surface. The design is efficient for planing on top of the water. The board is quick. It's loose and responsive in small and mushy waves, which pretty much what we're dealing with in, you know, because a lot of this stuff is stemming from ocean surfing, but you got to understand that we're dealing with small waves pretty much all the time. However, they are more unstable in bigger surf or in bigger waves, so they tend to slide out a little bit more. So with that single concave there on the bottom, it gives you a little bit more drive, a little bit more sticky icky to the wave.
It's kind of the example of when you watch guys on skim style, when they go and air the board, they got to land a certain way, otherwise the board's just going to slide out. You know, they got to engage that back fin or engage the rail to get the board back in. Whereas if you air a board with concave in it, as soon as that board makes contact with the water again, that water is going to shoot back up in the concave, and you get almost a little bit more grip even out of the concave itself.
That's right.
As well as the rail and the fins, and everything kind of works cohesively.
Yeah. So those are pretty much the two main, well, I would say the single concave is probably your main concave that you'll see, or bottom contour that you'll see in wake surfing, that we think it's probably the most efficient without doing too much and without looking too flashy. I mean, there's all kinds of other concaves that are out there, but
there's a ton.
Yeah.
I mean, you can talk a little bit about the V, which a lot of times you'll see the concave through the center, single concave, and it'll do the V out the tail. It's almost to release the water out of the tail. So when you do put pressure on the tail one way or the other, water will kind of be directionalized, if you will. Yeah,
I was looking at like a single concave to a double, maybe for a new model for the next coming season. I was also looking into like parabolics, like parabolic rails, because I was reading an article on Flex, and I think that I probably shouldn't have said that.
Start playing around.
Yeah, we'll play around with it. Anyway, that's to come. So the next thing that we'll get into is tail design. And so basically, these are all surf style types of tail designs. So you got your squashes, your square tails, your thumb tails, your rounded pins, your swallows, your bats, your wings, all that stuff.
And there's combinations of those.
Yes, and there are combinations.
They start getting really funny names.
Yeah, they do have some funny names. So,
but those are the main ones.
Yeah. So let's see. So we primarily use a rounded squash in our tail. So you'll notice that we also wing it in right there. It's just because it's basically to reduce volume there, or the width in the tail, just because if you continued that, it might look a little wide. So we tend to.
Well, not that, but it'll be, I mean, the straighter your rail, the rounder your turns will be. Yep. So bringing in that wing and kind of narrowing the tail up a little bit. We got to keep some width on the wake surf tail because you are planing so often. You need that surface area back there to hold you up. Otherwise, you'll sink. So yeah, doing the wings and then narrowing the tails up a little bit allows us to keep the rails straighter, which gives you more control. But when you go to turn,
more speed,
more control, more speed. But when you go to turn, that narrower tail will allow the board to turn sharper.
Right. So so this is on our Neo right here, and it's also very similar to our nub step tail. So I mean, we kind of use the KISS method, just keep it simple, stupid. And we just kind of keep it nice and round. So the good thing about a rounded squash tail is it's got good quick release, sharp and loose turns, or it's good for sharp and loose turns. It's more surface area there in the back, kind of like what Brian was saying. If you got a little skinny tail, yeah, it's good. It'll be able to turn, but you're just going to sink the bottom of that tail. And it's good control in steep waves. So most of the waves today are pretty steep, and there's no sharp edges for spin. So if you go back and you look at, let's just say, like the wingtail or let's just look at the swallowtail. That's really good for pivoting and doing, nice hacks and stuff like that. But what you're going to get is you don't want any obstructions whenever you're actually going to go out and do a spin or a 360 or something like that. So that's why you really don't see us doing many fishtails. And, we have people all the time, hey, man, you have a fish. Like, it looks really cool, but it's not very practical for...
We had a model years ago.
Called the fly fish.
The fly fish. It was a cool board.
Yeah.
But it was really meant to be surf style.
Yeah, it was more of a surf style board. And I don't know. In my opinion, having those points or those, there on the back, it's not going to allow the water to flow around those edges very well. And it could catch and you could, not do your three. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's one of the reasons that you see more of our tails that are pretty round and pretty squashy, as you would say.
They're forgiving.
They're very forgiving. So there was that. Let's see. So the next thing that we look at is nose design. And this is a question that I get a lot of the times. Or real quick, do we have any questions on any of that?
Just some people chatting about, let's see. Some personal conversations happening between Dylan and Vanessa.
Don't do it, Vanessa.
John, I agree with you 100%. Goofy side for the win.
What's wrong with you? Kelly Slater's a natural foot, regular.
Look, he lost today. Okay, he's out.
But he's always a champion. He has a wave park.
Love the Neo. That's from Julius. Our friend nailed it. 360 right off the bat.
Good.
Love that.
Good.
So no questions so far.
Okay, so the next thing that we'll get into, which is a big question on phone calls all the time.
Why?
What?
Why that nose?
Why I was like, I thought you saw something on my presentation that I was messing up. Okay, so I'm actually going to talk about the nub step first. So the nub step is the blue board up there in the top right. So that's got your more pulled in nose. And the reason that we do that, number one, sometimes it's just mental. Sometimes people just like that pointed nose. And what you're going to get with more of that curved point to the tip is you're going to get harder turns, or basically a deeper, sharper
tighter
turn. Yep. Yeah. And so
less stability though.
It is less stability because that's less surface area. So if you're just a true surfer, you're not going to be out there, doing big air 180s whenever. So if you're going to go up and you're going to do an air 180, that nose becomes the tail. And that little bitty point basically sinks. So remember we were talking about the pintails or something like that. Then
you're now riding a pintail.
You're now riding a pintail.
Yep.
So basically, if you're not going to be doing that, the nub step is an all-around great, very fast, very hacky, very slashy surf style board in 2019.
So another way to look at that, although the nub step has been great for 360s and it's been a high performance board it's a great board, but when you're doing 360s, that pointed nose can catch, especially in the face of the wave. If you don't get that lip up, get that nose above the lip, or keep it out of the water, it'll grab.
Absolutely. So so a lot of people actually, they say, well, what's the difference between the nub step and the Neo? And pretty much it's just the noses for the most part. Now the Neo, basically, you're going to have more of the, this is my Neo right here. You have more of your blunt nose. So what we do is we expanded the nose, we widened the nose for a little bit more stability and a little bit more surface area.
Gives you a straighter rail.
Yep. And so basically, whenever you go up and you do a air 180 and that nose becomes the tail again, like I was saying, you have more surface area to land on there. So that's why you'll see a lot of competition riders out surfing with these blunt noses, because as they go up, they come down, they use that nose as the tail for a quick second. That helps them get back into the wave, and then they spin it back around again, and they're off to the races.
And you can look at the 360 also. Once you get the board 180, then you have that surface area to continue your move, continue your weight transfer, and continue the board around. So that's another benefit. And keeping the wider nose, again, I'm gonna get back to the rail. Keeping the wider nose gives you a longer, straighter rail, which is just more speed and more stability when you're going straight down the line.
Yeah, and that's actually why they make longboards so straight, is for speed.
Yep.
But then you'll also notice on longboards though, because you have all that surface area there on the shaft of the board or the main part of the board, they'll actually bring that tail in real nice and almost like a pintail, so that way you can really get back there on the back of it, sink it, and change directions because you have so much more board there in front of you.
Yep.
So all that is very important to design as well. So if you look at the bottom, we kind of have a mix right there. We kind of have more of like a round. I'm looking at the El Jefe on the bottom left. Have just more of that round pointed nose right there, and that's mainly for surface area, helping to keep that rail line nice and straight. And then we have our traditional pointed nose there on our mongrel right there.
So hold on real quick. Christopher Myers has a question. Let me go back to it. Any need for surface friction reducers?
Surface friction reducers.
So elaborate on your question, Christopher, because I could take that multiple ways.
Surface friction reducers.
So
I wonder if he's talking about the little inserts that go in the back boxes for the futures.
See, that could be one.
Yeah.
Concaves could be one.
Mm-hmm. I wonder.
Could be one.
I wonder if he's talking about like spraying something on the bottom of it.
Mm-hmm. That could be one. Waxes. Yeah. Yep. Waxes.
Yeah.
Chris, to answer your question, there's been a lot of theories on that, and I think a lot of guys in the ocean surf industry, as well as the wake surf industry, wakeboard industry, the snowboarding industry, I think everybody has played with different things.
Coatings,
different coatings, different materials, different waxes. But I think in general, you're playing with. I don't know. We've never done anything with it, and honestly, if you're having a hard time with speed or anything like that,
you may look at changing your fins or your board, or looking at your wave seriously.
Yeah. Now, I will tell you that in ocean surfers, we're big about this. We call it a Chinese wax job. That you don't want wax on the bottom of the board. A lot of guys are very finicky about that. You want to keep the bottom clean. You want to keep it free of debris and free of bumps or anything like that. As far as going as far as saying, hey, I'm gonna put a coat of turtle wax on my board. I don't think that's necessary. But keeping it clean, keeping wax off the bottom,
look good.
Yeah, I think that makes a difference.
Yeah. But
again, you're talking minute details.
Yeah, we've been surfing for a long time, and I've never, heard of any guys at the beach or anything like that saying, dude, you got to try this new spray on stuff. So
yeah. So Chris, let me know if that answered your question. Hopefully it did.
Yeah. We missing anything else?
Let's see. Yeah. So Eric kind of elaborated on that, some sort of coating to reduce the amount of cohesion.
Is he having a problem?
Yeah. Chris, are you having a problem? Ceramic coated.
I've heard somebody posted the other day about ceramic coating their board. What?
Christopher Franco's popping off.
Uh-oh.
Me versus Brock, 1-0 longboard games.
I think that the only what? No. Christopher Franco, keep eating your In-N-Out burger. I'm gonna keep eating my Whataburger. That's way better than In-N-Out burger. So Chris is he's quite a bit of the poo talker. The poo. Yeah. But anyway, you guys need to check out our El Jefe games too, which we'll be shooting a new episode here shortly.
Cool. So good news, we answered Chris's question.
Good.
And he did have issues before until he switched to a dune board.
Oh my God.
Thank you, Chris.
Would you say that he's surfing different now?
I think he's surfing different.
Buy board, get board, surf different.
Boom.
That's the logo, or that's the motto.
Dylan says Whataburger.
Yeah, that's right. Dylan, Whataburger. I'm not getting into this debate again.
Okay, so Eric says ceramic coating the top of the snowboard is awesome. That way the snow doesn't stick to the top of the board.
Huh.
So you could maybe look at that for the top. And I mean, I don't see lake water sticking to the top of these boards a ton, but if you want to play around with that.
I mean, if you want to put some type of like
I'd love to hear some
hydrophobic
feedback. That'd be neat to get some feedback on some testing.
Yeah, go out and test it.
Yeah, let us know.
And then we'll talk about it. Yeah. What?
So Phil.
Oh God.
Lambrucos?
Lambrucos, yeah. Phil Lambrucos.
So Chris mentioned his name, and Phil said, "Don't drag me into this." He's trying to enjoy the podcast. So there's a lot of trash talking on here. I wish our thing was up to date here.
Oh, I wish it was. Sorry that our comments load real slow. Chick-fil-A, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, moving on.
Crystal Burger.
Where were we?
We're talking about surfboard design, not Crystal Burger, Chick-fil-A, Whataburger. Even though Whataburger's the best.
So we were talking about tails. What are their aspects?
Oh, volume.
So let me back up on tails real quick. So you'll notice that the Nupstep and the Neo have very similar tails. There's a few little tweaks that we're gonna hold proprietary, but the new bandwagon has a different tail, right? It's not as wide.
Oh yeah, we haven't really talked about the bandwagon very much.
It doesn't have the wings. So on the bandwagon, when you take out the wings, it pulls that rail in. So the bandwagon, being a little bit more of a high performance board, was designed to be more for the guy who likes to turn and drive and cut, and taking out the wings and turning the rails in a little bit more towards the back of the board allows that board to get those tighter turns when you're on the back.
Absolutely. So a lot of people ask me, what's the difference between the bandwagon and the Neo? And so basically, the bandwagon is going to be more for your competition style rider, or if you're just a smaller person in general. Smaller women that are like 130 pounds, 120 pounds. The 4.4 bandwagon is going to be money.
There's quite a few different. Although at first glance they look the same, because they got similar width and they both got the blunt nose, but rail design is different. Rocker is different. Concave is different. Tail rocker is different.
Width is different.
The width is different. The volumes are different. The rail curve, there's quite a bit different.
Yeah. So, if you're looking to get more into that competition style type of riding, you want to reduce the amount of volume that you actually have underneath your feet, you could switch over to the bandwagon this year. Because, that's what Perry Morrison uses in his world competitions. And we made that board for him so that way he could go out there and flick that thing around and do what he does. And that's why he has that blunt nose, so he can land those, reverse tricks with that board. Missing anything?
Welcome to try and demo a skin board. Do you still do custom boards?
No. So we got out of the custom game probably 2 or 3 years ago.
2 years ago.
And the reason that we did that is because we would have people call us in January. They would put it down a deposit, and they wouldn't get their board till almost the next year.
Because the problem is we had, we're trying to build a company. We're trying to build our dealer network. We're trying to build trying to reach more people. We want to get our boards under more people's feet. And so when you're trying to appease the custom market, it gets extremely difficult when you're trying to keep up with your production orders. And so long story short, we were having a hard time meeting the needs of the custom people as well as
our dealers
and trying to get more boards under everybody's feet, to where we just kind of had to pick one or the other. We couldn't do both well. So we decided, hey, let's focus on the production side of things. Let's focus on what we know works, what everybody's going to love. And, it was a tough decision.
It was a very tough decision. So, now, we still build all of our boards the same exact way. It's just now that we would probably call them more of a production custom. You're still getting the custom feel. You're still getting the hand-shaped board. You're still getting all the craftsmanship that we have built into Doomswell.
Built the same way?
They're built the same exact way. But we're just not going to be able to put the same exact, we're not going to be able to match it to your boat. We're not going to be able to put, your mom's face on the bottom that says, "I love mom," stuff like that. Now, we've done a bunch of stuff like that in the past, but it's just, we just couldn't keep both sides balanced. So we had to go the production route.
Yep.
Let's see. Let's look here on the comments real quick.
Let's load these guys. Hey, if anybody out there in the Facebook world knows how to keep these comments live, our comments drag and they pause on us.
Yeah, so sorry.
Wait for them to reload. Maybe it's my computer.
Maybe it's your computer. In and out for the win. John, I think I'm just going to keep the surf rack now.
Dude, this thing is sick.
Yeah, really show that nice. One more time for anybody else that just tuned in to the podcast.
So what are we giving away?
We're going to be giving away a Hyperride Designs board rack meant for traditional surf style construction boards. And so I'll go back here. And this is what your Doomswell could look like in a rack. Right there. So they're so solid. They're so sleek. They're sexy. They're heavy. So let's go ahead and I guess let's give this bad boy away.
How do we do that?
What we're going to do, and I know everybody liked my trivia question last week about the Marianas Trench. Let's see. And actually, let me see here.
What's your question?
What year, if you've been watching the podcast, I'll make this a podcast question.
I like it.
What year, and so real quick, the first person that we see in the comments is going to win this. What year was the movie Gidget released?
Wait, Chris started answering before you even. What year?
You don't know? I'll tell you when it is. Oh, hang on.
Here, just look at that.
Yeah, here we go. Nope, 1994. Oh, Christopher Myers won. Hang on, let me see, make sure. Chris Myers, you won. 1965.
I think he guessed.
Well, no, it was right here. So, where's it at? There we go. 1965. That's whenever Gidget was released, and that was
that's a fun way.
Yeah, no. Watch this scene though. Look how like legit surfing they're doing. Look at that.
I wear a hat like that every time I surf.
I wear it whenever I cut the grass.
My board shorts go a little bit higher though.
They would. So Christopher Myers, congratulations on your new surf rack. We will get that over to you. If you would, please email me at brock@doomswell.com and give me your...
So Chris paid attention, he said. And funny... Well, no, go ahead.
What? Okay.
We'll touch on that later.
Okay. Well, anyway, guys, it is 7:32. We're going to keep this right at an hour. We thank everybody for coming out to the Doomswell podcast. Next week, we'll probably be talking about the best wake surf lakes throughout the United States. So if you guys, so if you guys have any like little nook and cranny lake that you know is just like amazeballs, email it to me at brock@doomswell.com. I will look into it, and we're going to rank these things probably 1 to 10. And if we mention your lake, we'll give you a shout out. So anyway, thanks for tuning into the Doomswell podcast. We will see you guys next week, 6:30 on Thursday. Later.